So turning to Section 6, which is the bribery of the foreign public official, this offence will be committed if a person offers or gives a financial or other advantage to a foreign public official in his official capacity, with the intention of influencing the foreign public official and obtaining or retaining business. So there is no improper element. And it seems to me that inevitably catches, at least on the face of it, for example, inviting your foreign public official who may have the authority to issue your banking license, may have the authority to license your products that you want to sell in that jurisdiction. You know, the mere fact that you've invited them to London, for example, could be seen as offering an advantage. So there is certainly a lot of concern about the width of Section 6. And I'm afraid I'm not going to stand here this morning and tell you for sure what is okay and what is not. And the Serious Fraud Office, despite the best efforts by the CBI, in my view, are not going to tell you either what is and what isn't legitimate hospitality in this context. And you're going to have to take into account all of the factors I talked about in respect of Sections 1 and 2, but you are undoubtedly going to have to be a lot more careful about business reasons, making sure they're recorded contemporaneously, making sure that kind of entertainment doesn't happen too close to a bid for a contract, for example, or a tender, and that any hospitality that accompanies, say, a factory visit or a sales promotion is really quite moderate and linked to a business case. Now, that is undoubtedly going to put an increased burden on business. I think the systems that we've looked at or heard about earlier this morning are going to be very important in helping you with that. But clearly, individuals are going to need to be taking responsibility and looking at where the red flags are coming up. You know, why is a particular individual always out for lunch with this particular individual? Is it because they're mates and there's no real corrupt intention but they're defrauding your business? Or is it because they're trying to get an advantage improperly or otherwise with the foreign public official? So a lot to think about there for business, certainly those operating with foreign public officials. We've talked about the adequate procedures being updated. Certainly the draft I saw in early July was a shambles. It was about that thick and certainly not a workable document for any kind of business, large or small. As I've said, there's continued pressure for the guidance to be issued by the SFO to cover not just adequate systems and controls, but also this whole area of hospitality. And I just think it's impossible for the SFO, in fact, to give any kind of guidance on what is appropriate hospitality. You're going to need to think about what's okay for your business, what's seen by the market as okay for your business, what jurisdiction you're in. Although custom doesn't give you any kind of defence, local custom certainly doesn't give you any kind of defence, that will form the basis of whether what you're doing or not looks improper or looks like it might be trying to get business that you wouldn't otherwise have. So local custom is important in that context, just in terms of what might be lavish hospitality, rather than giving you a lawful excuse for committing acts of bribery. At the risk of repeating myself, I do really want to emphasise that there is a lot of talk around this area. My personal view is a lot of it is slightly hysterical and misguided, but it is a very serious issue. But what the government is really trying to do with this act is trying to stop large, corrupt payments to public officials to build bridges, to have oil and gas licences, to have banking licences. They are not actually that interested, in my view, and have stated it publicly, in prosecuting individuals for these kind of breaches, particularly where they're happening overseas. There's all sorts of difficulties with evidence and whether it's in the public interest and all of those factors. But the reason why it's so important that you get it right is, firstly, Section 1 and Section 6 are the two offences that that bind the corporate. So just to be clear, the Section 2, the receiving of the bribe, does not give corporate liability. And again, there's quite a lot of misunderstanding about that. And the reason why Section 2, the receiving the bribe, doesn't give you corporate liability is because the Serious Fraud Office and the FSA want you to tell them about it. And they don't want you to be concerned while you're telling them about it that you might have committed the corporate offence. So it's to encourage self-reporting, and it's also to encourage you to take serious action against those people in your business who are inappropriately receiving bribes. So just coming towards the end then, Section 1 and Section 6 are important in their own right, but they're mainly important because if I was a prosecutor, it would be the starting point or a key point when I would look at whether your systems and controls were adequate. If you don't have a gifts and hospitality register, if you don't have an ethics, gifts and hospitality policy, if when red flags come into your system you do nothing about it, that is evidence, the best kind of evidence you could give a prosecutor to show that your systems and controls are failing. And that's, in my view, why it's so important that you get this right. I think that as a business you have to balance over prescriptive rules. I think you have to balance over onerous procedure, which certainly can stifle entrepreneurial activity. Clearly sales forces are particularly at risk in this area and need to be controlled. In my experience, they're particularly resistant to being controlled. So if you put in systems in place that are unworkable for them, they will find a way around them. And that's why it's very important, I think, to take a practical approach to this area, and in fact to the Act generally, by looking at your risk appetite as a business, your risk in terms of sector, where you're operating, and who in your business are the high-risk people. That doesn't mean not everyone needs training, but different people are going to need different kinds of training, and different resources are going to need to be focused on the more high-risk areas. And nothing will work better than people, leaders and middle managers, where these things often happen in the middle management area, taking responsibility for looking at these things and questioning why they're happening and dealing with them when they go wrong. I think that's probably all I wanted to say on that for the moment. I hope that it was practical and relevant. That was my intention anyway. Thank you very much.